Welcome you everyone to today's Treff. I will give today the presentation, a brief introduction. Who am I? I am Patrick Beck. I'm one of the founders of this Blacksmith Without Borders project. You are in the, I don't know, however many Treff. We are doing this now since 2021, almost every month with many, many different people. And yeah, I'm very happy to be part of this project and very happy that today I can talk this presentation to you. Myself, started forging in 2018 with the basic education here in Finland. I was before already a hobby smith, but well, it was a very, very occasional hobby, let's put it that way. Didn't spend much time in the forge, went through basic education in Finland, and then went through journeyman education in Finland and got my journeyman certificate at 2021. Afterwards, on the way to master education, I went to CBA or ABANA level 2 or national curriculum, and I'm also a certified instructor in this. So I think after being, I would say, a reason I can call myself an intermediate smith. I think I can talk a bit about how one can improve as a beginner and also how one can improve after one has kind of passed towards this beginner entrance level. Um, I think the best thing you can do as a beginner is practice, practice, practice. In Finnish, there is this saying, harjoitus tekee mestarin, which in German is Übung macht den Meister and translates in English to practice makes perfect. I personally like, though, more that how it is framed in the other languages I know with practice makes the master, because I think perfection is something which is almost not achievable in the reality. It's something to aim for, but it's, I would say, never really present. There's always something you could improve to make it really perfect. But I think the best way to get better, especially in the beginning, is forge more and then still a couple of more times until you have some idea what is happening when you use your hammer or which chisel or whichever kind of tool you are using. Another very good tip is, in my opinion, to get a good teacher or mentor. This can cut so much time off your learning experience. You can progress so much faster if you can relate with someone who has more experience with you than you, sees, you have see some mistake in your work, you have no idea what is going wrong, you ask, and usually people who are more advanced can say, ah, yeah, actually, you are holding your hammer like this, right? And then you say, yes, okay, this is why this is happening. And if you hold it the other way around or like this or like that, then it will change. And then you do, and then you see maybe some improvement, and then again, it's up to practice. And if not um, directly improvement comes, then it's some learning experience. I think I have experienced blacksmithing as very humbling over the time until now. Other good sources for how to get better is read books. Especially in the beginning, I found it very helpful because books, other than most of the other sources I have seen so far, are edited by multiple people, which makes them a more consolidated source. And usually this makes for a better learning reference. Good books which I reference since the beginning still until now. On the picture you can see Creative Blacksmithing by Pete Oberon and Harvard Berglund, Die Kunst des Schmiedens. In English it's The Art of Forging, I think, by Harvard Berglund. Both fantastic books. And a third one, which was also our teaching book in education, was uh, Swedish Blacksmithing by Lars Gunnar Enander. And Other very good books are all the three Skills of a Blacksmith book by Mark Asbury. I still reference them, I would say once a month, at least as so often that I notice that I still use them fairly often. These not cheap books, but very, very good investment if you want to become better and like go improve as a smith. And then watch YouTube. Especially in the beginning, there is so much good YouTube channels to learn the basics in blacksmithing, and it definitely helps if it's not only a picture or a descriptive text to learn something like some forging technique, how to hold the hammer, how to place yourself at the anvil, how to place the work in relation to your hammer and to yourself at the anvil. Uh, Drawings can be very, very, very good in explaining things, but sometimes, and people understand things in different ways. Sometimes they just don't do everything. Okay, so this is an introduction, and now the question is, once you feel profound in the basic techniques and you have watched all the YouTube and you have the feeling you know something how the hammer moves, how can one improve from there? If we could go one page further, I have some suggestions which I would like to share with you. And the first suggestion I have is get together with other smiths. This can be online as we do now, but even better, especially for this learning and seeing things, is often to go to events, like go to your local blacksmiths club meeting, go to some workshop, go somewhere else, because you see how different people achieve the same results or different results, obviously. And it just helps enormously to see how someone else does it. Like not only so that you can do it the same way, but also to spark your creativity, how you can, maybe you come up with a totally new way, which is different from your previous and what other people are doing just by seeing how other people do what they do. And all, this is not only for techniques, this is also for tools, how to organize the workshop, how to organize your work, how to arrange things. And one last tip in this: do not only look at the people who are more advanced, especially if you're yourself already along the journey a bit further. Look also how people with less experience than you do it. Because you might see some mistakes which you were not even aware of that you do them yourself. Or you see how other people do something just different, and it just helps to look at everyone. I'm always, when I have here people for this basic introduction forging courses, is often I learn as much as they, just by looking what they do wrong and what I have, of course, also done similar in the beginning. Another thing I found very helpful is explore new fields, and this can be either forging related or not. So, for example, let's say you start because you're a knife smith or you do whatever else you do, and it just is handy to incorporate some woodwork, or you make tables, you start incorporating woodwork, or you incorporate leather work or whatever else. It can be something which is quite different from forging, but just complementary. And being like exploring this new field can open new ways of thinking, that one can do stuff in different ways. Um, Of course, it can also be new fields of which are forging related. For me lately, this was in the right bottom. You can see it. I'm in the process of practicing my drawing skills, getting them a bit better. which is very helpful if you can somehow draw as well enough to communicate with your customer or workmate or whoever. Drawing is a very, very handy skill. Um, and no, it helps to be better at it than one is now. I think this is a good way to put it. Um, Otherwise, which I have been lately, I've lately got the commission. One can see it there for repoussé work. It's the first time I ever have been working with copper on that large a scale. It's like about A4 size. This copper plate, and yeah, I had to do. I had never done this. We didn't have this in school. We had very, very short introduction to forging copper, like from bar stock. And yeah, only seeing how these tools need to be polished to a different level because they make different impressions than in steel. And one sees it's very different. Um, was quite some learning experience for me and helped me also to think about reprofiling the tools for forge work. Like one concrete example is I had before the like the fullers just straight the whole way, a couple of them at least, and then afterwards I rounded the edges like with a cutting chisel, so it blends in better. And no, I've also been doing not so much fullering beforehand, but there it was pretty obvious that this is what needs to be done to get a better result. Um, and another field I've been lately exploring is automata. Like it's some kind of mechanical toys where usually you like turn something or push a button and something happens. I've been always fascinated in these, and there on the left you can see some automaton which is performing a bench press, which I lately created. Very, very interesting. Lots of learning about mechanics and tolerances, especially. Um, yeah, yeah, I had lots of fun doing it, but and it offers lots of learning. So I definitely recommend um, if you if you feel stuck in this how to perform, like how to improve as a blacksmith, look at something either forging related or not, which you have not been doing before, and see how things can cross with each other and complement each other. Another very, very good way I found to improve is to take classes and go to formal education. Um, if you have formal education available in your country, like for example in Finland, we have several levels like beginner, journeyman, and master's education. In different countries, this is different. If you want to become a professional smith, usually I would say this helps to go through this kind of education, especially if you have a good teacher, because no, it first of all, usually the process is designed such that you learn something, and second, you afterwards have some certification which might help you when talking later with customers or talking with possible employers or what have you. And I think therefore this is very helpful. Other formal education, CBA, Abana curriculum, fantastic. As I said, I have gone through level 1 and 2. Lots of learning one can do there, and one also there gets some cool certificates, which look excellent on the wall. Also, this I can say from experience, yeah. um, and very good there is they are available often in person classes and in online classes. And especially if you live in bumfuck nowhere, which some people do, I, for example, do live relatively in bumfuck nowhere, um, it helps a lot if you can contact with teachers and other students via internet because it offers you some kind of community support, but without the difficulty and budgeting of traveling. And I have found this very, very helpful. Of course, in-person classes, if you can take them and you can go to a meeting and take their class or whatever. It's fantastic, but it might be more difficult to arrange. And I think we have, thanks to COVID actually, improved these online classes so much that nowadays one can learn from there a lot, which was before not possible. Another thing which I can very much encourage is to study nature, natural forms, everything regarding to this. For example, when I like, and this can come in different forms. As you see on the right, with this art piece called Natural Relations, it can be very, very abstract. Like, but there was this idea how things can, like, how things can relate to each other, and I had this idea. No, this double helix thing looks kind of appealing for this. And this was one way for me to get inspiration. Or in the center, it's like a thinking fish. I think this kind of fish doesn't exist in reality. I don't personally know how fishes think too well, but this particular, it's for a customer who is, I'm not often overthinking things, is someone I know personally, and he likes fishes, so I thought it's a good compromise. Anyway, take this inspiration for this fish form from nature and adjust it a bit to the need case. And this picture on the left shows another automaton I built, which performs a deadlift. And there it was, for me, quite important to look. I have been looking at the movement from many different angles to get the proportions and from which position the body moves through which steps where, right? And it looks pretty easy. It looks off if you are not careful taking the reality into account. And another thing, once you start these studies and start, for example, to look at spirals and, for example, maybe you do scroll work or what have you, you start to see the scrolls and patterns everywhere. And it might be helpful to incorporate them in designs as well. I think, in my understanding at least, Smiths have been doing this since basically ever, and it has created lots of good ironwork. And then, well, yet another tip, still harjoitustekemestarin. Once you are better, you still have to do more test pieces and training and so on. At least I have met no one with any practice level whatsoever who has ever said, "Yeah, I know now everything and I can everything." It's still you still have to practice. And still also this, like my master in education, still burned pieces and burned himself because he was touching iron which was hot, and it's just never ending learning process, I think. And at least this is how I have come to know it. And also when you are further, a good teacher or mentor is especially helpful because then you at a certain level, you understand what you don't understand, and you're able to ask questions. I remember this from me from the beginning. I was just absorbing, like looking how things do. And then I was asked, "Do you have any issues? Like, do you need any further help?" And my answer was no. And partly this answer was because I had no idea what I did not know. But this gets better over time. So now I still often don't know what I don't know, but I get there that I can at least sometimes see, okay, this might be a problem, and this might be something I might need help with. And then it is especially helpful to have a good mentor and a good teacher. And then again, read books. Probably by this time now you want more specialized books. As you can see, there is one which is for particularly for locksmithing, a very interesting, very good book. the metric measurements are a bit rough, but otherwise I think it's an American book to begin with, so it's an Imperial, so yeah, how doesn't matter. Still a great resource. And this design book, which got me lately because I thought I have to a bit up my design game, learn a bit more in this direction. And also their books can be very, very helpful because again, they usually go through more hands than just video explanations or blog posts. Yeah, and then YouTube also there. Every now and then I watch something because I don't know how to do it, and then if someone else has a video how he or she has been doing it, it can be very helpful to see how one can approach a certain problem. Yeah, and this leads to my final slide, which is I would like this time to have this discussion a bit more open. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to ask me or ask this to the chat. But I would be especially or find it especially interesting if you have any own insights how you have been developing further as a smith. Probably there are some things I did not even mention because every smith is different and like, yeah.
I commented in the chat that I found that teaching was one of the best ways for me to really learn.
Yep.
Trying to share the skill that I have made me really focus on what I was doing and how I did it.
Yeah, for example, with me, I have exchanged knowledge with a friend, Flavio from Chile, in a way that I didn't know anything about art or how to forge with art because all my work was about making knife, Damascus, and some ironwork, but not that artistic like for sculpture. So we make an exchange. I teach him how to make a Damascus knife. He teach me how to make art. And in that way, you trick yourself to something that otherwise you are never going to try because there are some techniques that you never try because maybe it's out of your skill or you are not good at that, so you try to avoid it. And in that way, you force yourself to do something new that is completely outside your range. But you have someone to guide you and say, yeah, you can try it like this and this and give you this concept. So it's a good way to share.
Beth?
One of my favorites is going to conferences and meets and Treffs like this. But the in-person ones are fantastic, where just the fact that I can go watch so many different people forging, and sometimes the person who I think I'm going to be spending hours watching and that I'm really excited about, I end up going, oh, okay, never mind, and I get caught up in somebody completely different. And I haven't really gone to Treffs outside of the US, but in the US, I have to say the California ones are unusually good value and really dense in terms of how much is going on and how many different kinds of things there are for you to learn from. But that chance of being able to see different people. But I also love the ones where there's just one person and we can really go deep with that person and ask them lots of questions. But I love that in person asking questions, and I love being able to see a lot of different styles. And as a bunch of people have said, that's the kind of thing that'll get me to think about forging in ways I haven't, think about doing projects that I wouldn't have been interested in. And that stretches me in more ways, which is always good.
I do personally give teaching lessons. And what I do is making a complete program from designing to technical designing and then forge it so that every pupil can learn the steps he or she has to make to complete the work. And that works very good.
I think what I found over the years is obviously when you first start, you really are looking at practicing techniques punching, splitting, all those type of things. And I think what I used to do is obviously look and explore old works so you can see, well, work out how some of those old stuff is put together, and then obviously try and copy it so you can work out how it was done and etc. But also I think you've got to have a little bit of an explorative mind in terms of creative ideas, because often coming up with a creative idea, you have to then work out how the devil you're going to make this thing. And I think in doing that, often it does push your forging boundaries and abilities. I think for me, that's been one of the things that stretched me the most, is because there aren't always answers in books, and other people often may have not made what you're trying to make. They might give you a couple of insights, but ultimately you've got to figure it out yourself. And I think for me, that's where the bigger learning experiences have happened, in that exploration of an idea. And it's something you never stop doing. There's always problems to solve. So you just tend to see sometimes some of the problems that you might be getting into coming up a bit sooner. But other than that, that's been my personal experience. And also visiting art galleries, books, just having that inquisitive mind sparks ideas, which you then have to try and create. And that in itself, I think, pushes you along. That's my own personal experience. And also, I guess, if you do teach, when you have students that are doing something and they say, how do I get round doing this? And you suddenly got to put your thinking hat on and come up with a solution to help them create what they're doing. And I think that can also sort of stretch you, but often in a bit of a different way. But it's all grist to the mill, isn't it? You never ever stop learning. So I don't know, you just have to keep hammering. I think the more you do it, the more different things you try, the greater your breadth of experience becomes. There's no one right way to do so many things. There's many different processes and ways to achieve an end. It's finding the way that works for yourself, I think. It's been my experience of it.
Yeah, also two things that are related is I recommend a lot is, one is going to museums and take a look at pieces that are made with tools we normally don't have or are lost in time, and that push your brain to think how you can do it with less tools, or for example, the other one is making biking stuff. For example, for me, learning to weld with brass in the forge, something you normally are going to use a torch, which is quite easy. But doing on the forge is quite tricky. So then you push yourself with techniques that otherwise you're not going to use it, because now we have more easy ways to do it. But make your brain work a little extra and try to think how to solve. For example, for me, I try to trick myself to say, okay, how can I do this with less tools? And then when I go to the biking markets, I try to bring actually less tools and try to solve the problems and do the same result by using less things. So then you can say, okay, maybe this tongue I can use it for this and this, or how can I make this shape without a horn, or things like that. So then you can explore different ways, and maybe you find something interesting in that process.
Yeah, it's it's interesting, isn't it? Learning, it's a great learning experience. But I think thinking back, I mean, seeing an old piece of metalwork that you like, and then trying to reproduce it or work out how somebody's actually created that can be a really good learning process.
Now, I'm just a beginner smith, basically, but I always had a mentor. And one of the best lessons that he told me about starting out as a blacksmith is you just have to be at the forge every day. You just have to heat up that metal, test out different metals. It could be a 5160 or whatever, and then just try to observe how the metal bends when you hammer it and be consistent with it. That's what actually helped me on my hammer techniques. Like there are different metals and how to hammer them. I think you master smiths already know about this. Like how hard you hit a metal, if it's 5160 or soft metal, there's a certain way how you hammer it down so it forms properly. That's what I've learned from him basically. Like just go out every day, go to your forge, even if you're tired, you're angry, whatever your excuse is, just go out to the forge and just hammer and just observe how that metal folds, how that metal bends, and learn from there. That's one of the best lessons I have learned from him, basically.
Wax, one of the things I'm really liking about what you're saying is it's not just about hammering as many times as possible, but it's about paying attention to the results and learning from that. Because I've seen too many people who sort of have this like, I just got to hammer a lot, and they're doing kind of meh work, and they just keep repeating that because they're not doing those next two steps of paying attention and learning from it and then modifying what they're doing. And it's always fascinating to me to see the difference between folks who keep getting better because they bother to keep getting better, and folks who sort of get static and like happy with like, okay, I've learned 10 projects. I'll just do these 10 projects. And I've seen guys who'd been smiths for 15 years and they were still advanced beginners, you know, with this many projects that they could do. And that's it. And it's if you're happy, I guess, but that's really sad to me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Beth. It really is about observing what's going on when you're working the material. And if things are going wrong, you have to look at what the effect of what's happening on the material, and then see if you, and then work out a way of changing that. Just repeating what you're doing or what have you, it doesn't get you too far. But it's observation, I think, is key, like you say.
Actually, I have a great example here. The knife was something that I have seen many people trying to make this design, and they fail, and they make for example, here, and it's coming this way, straight like this. And it's because they just hammer flat, and they don't understand that the shape you make here is just gonna expand when you hammer. So if you don't have that shape, it's never gonna happen. You need to have it to expand it, and then it's gonna be bigger, and you can file and change the design and everything. But you need to see that every time you make it like that, and you don't get that shape you want, you don't get this radius or a straight line, it's because it's not there. And you need to make it first. But you need to pay attention and say, why I always make the same design and I cannot change it. It's like I'm not controlling the design. The design is happening because it's the nature in the shape you have. And then you need to reshape it. And that's when you make the change and say, oh, yes. I need to put material there. So when I forge there, that material moves where I want.
Yeah. Sometimes it's important to keep good notes, take good measurements, and record them. And, you know, you're trying to make a scroll of a certain length. Look at the length you start with, look at what you end up with, and, you know how that went. You're going to forge a batch of what I'm working on right now is chisels for a stone carver. I'm working through the process and I'm finding, what I have to do, but measuring and keeping track and seeing what works the best. I did some axes, and it took me a while to get the proportions down for the folded axe, because what people were doing in their online videos and in the books I looked at wasn't working for me. Something about the way I was doing it, I needed to change those dimensions. So I had to track what I was doing and work that out. And again, sometimes that involves a certain amount of experimentation and a certain amount of pieces of work that I quench and throw into the woods behind my shop. But I was experimenting with welding in the bits and what steel I could weld in effectively in my gas forge. I tried a 1080 steel. I tried some 4142 steel, and I tried some 5160 steel. And same axe, everything the same, just a different bit. And I found that for me, the 5160 worked the best. I got the best, the cleanest weld and the nicest blend.
Okay.
But it was experimenting and keeping track and keeping notes in your measurements as to what you do, so that you can repeat it 5 years from now when you know that you did it once, but you've forgotten how.
That's
I
that is
remember,
key.
Yeah.
If I just want to echo what Steve said. So this is John here. So as you get to a certain age, you forget a lot of things. And so, I swear by these little field notes notebooks, because they're a size that fits in a back pocket. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I can make little sketches. When I take a class, I take notes of how things work. If I'm at a new shop, what the procedures are to operate their gas forge might be different from the coal forge, because I might not be back doing this for months or a couple of years. And so, like I've got my notes from taking Carl's Rudiments of Blacksmithing class, that are going back a few years now. But if I need to remember how he made tongs, I was taking enough notes at the time, and usually in a class, that's not your focus. So making the time and bringing the pencil and the notebook so that you can do it has proved to be very valuable for me, so that I'm watching him do a thing and I try and draw a picture of, how are we going to make this leaf? And I might be able to remember it based on, if I look in here and I can find it. And I found it also useful, since I've got about half a dozen of these, to put a little sort of a piece of masking tape with the project that's in there, so I can find which otherwise identical notebook this piece of information is in. Been very helpful.
Yeah, I think the note taking, I think this is what makes you better faster.
Yeah.
And you actually take aboard everything, right? Everything that everybody's talked about writing down, it's huge. And I think it's an interesting thing as a teacher. I know that blacksmiths have a really interestingly wide range of learning styles, because there's a lot of folks who come to blacksmithing because that's hitting what they do learn well. But for everybody, writing stuff down, whether it's words or drawings or 1, 2, 3s or whatever, always makes it go better. And I kind of don't understand it when folks stand at a demo in a class like this, and then they go off to forge it and they go, what do we do next? And as you said, John, that like I can go back and find stuff. I can look stuff up that I've done before. I can find the measurements, like Steve mentioned, from previous projects. I've got outlines in here of specific things with measurements on them. And for me, I keep a continuous run, and they're numbered. This is number 10, and they have dates on them. And, I just do a really rough table of contents in the front with what pages have what on them.
Yes, me too. Me too.
And that way, you know, if I can remember, I think that was in this year, I can look and just the table of contents and go, nope, it must have been a little earlier. And I can always find it pretty quick. And I've got a lot of Blacksmiths Without Borders in here.
Yeah, you can also leave notes for the future. Like, yeah, I don't know this now, but it's like something I have, for example, is many words in other language, because sometimes you have like, for example, in Japanese, I have a lot of kanji right here because they are the keywords, and maybe not everyone is able to understand what they say, but you can look what they are doing, and that never lies. So over there you can find sometimes great videos. Maybe it's not in the language you speak, but you can see what they're doing. And when you have these keywords, then you can unlock a lot of YouTube video, for example, or a lot of books that can bring you a crazy amount of knowledge, because some countries are specialized in something. It's like if you want to make a damasen, you need to go Arabic. It's no other way. They have the best techniques. You can also go Spanish, but it's gonna get more tricky and tricky if you go for different language. And also, for example, in my experience, in the old times, like maybe 12 years ago, there was a lot of people saying that you couldn't weld one steel with another X steel. Like, for example, with 1010 and 5160. There was a time there was a lot of people saying that's impossible because the chromium, and they make so weird mats. And then I tried, and it was quite possible. It's not now anyone is gonna say that it's not possible, but taking notes, trying, and said need to be that color, need to be that borax or that sand, and try it and fail and make mistakes. And the best you can do is pick every steel you can find and try to weld it together and see this works, this doesn't work, this work with this one, so I need the other one over here. You need to experiment a little and try to see what happened. Not always what they say in the internet is true. That's why also the books are so important, because people have checked it. No one is gonna put something wrong in a book. Or then you buy the second edition with some corrections.
Okay. Thank you again, guys. Again, as a beginner blacksmith, I really am appreciative of like right now, currently right now, I'm taking notes of what your guys is saying. And yes, the notes really helped me a lot. Before I went to Finland, this is the first time for me forging a knife, a puku traditional knife from Finnish, basically Finnish style, from a 440C. And as we all know, 440C stainless steels are very, very hard to hammer down. Yeah. So I even put notes on there that I farted and I curse a lot during the forging process. I don't have a power hammer. So it's just farting and just pissing myself off, trying to forge a seal. And this is also and this is the first time also I've tried to make a knife out of a hidden tang, because I'm used to like full tanks basically. So this is what I've forged, and I brought it to Finland. Hopefully Smith out there from Finland would help me out with this and what's wrong with it basically. But yeah, taking notes basically helped me a lot as a beginner blacksmith.
That's awesome. Nice.
Neat.
Yeah, it's a beautiful knife.
Neat.
Yeah, that looks good, man.
Thank you.
I've done just enough stainless to go, it's never happening ever again in my entire life, because I like my body and it's too frustrating.
I also buy 20 millimeter 440 to forge, and that was one try. That's it. It's not gonna happen.
So that's impressive, man. That's so impressive.
Yeah.
If you want to make stainless steel easier to forge some titanium.
I don't know. I haven't done it yet, but I've seen it. Nick Rossi does good demos on forging titanium, and it feels like the biggest problem is just making sure that you always keep the surface positive, because the oxide that forms is never coming off. And so a cold shut, the tiniest divot will turn into a cold shot. But it's marshmallowy.
Yeah.
Not the titanium I was working with.
It may have been the wrong titanium then. He
Yeah.
said the medical grade titanium is the stuff.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay. No. Maybe I give a quick summary of what has been happening in the chat. So there are a couple of people who said like from one can get the books in US from Blue Moon Press, including Norwegian and English books in like Swedish in English. Artisan Ideas also has lots of good blacksmithing books. Couple of people mentioned that teaching is how they improved. Nicholas Downing, personally, I have at various times gotten very obsessed with a particular facet of the craft. Forge welding, locksmithing, jewelry, and each of those has contributed to my practice as a whole. Monica Kjellman-Sharping. When I was just starting out, I got a scholarship to attend Center for Metal Art 6-week workshop, which was great, learning from Pat Quinn, Dan Neville, and Andy Donor, along with the other workshop attendees. Can highly recommend, along with Beth's suggestion of attending conferences and forge-ins. Yeah, and yeah, lots of people also agreeing that this writing stuff down, and I also agree. It's just fantastic. I would say this is the best thing I learned from all the courses I took with CBA was writing stuff down. I would like to thank you everyone for sharing how you have been improving as Smith. This has been as wonderful as I have wishing it would be. In case you like this project and you want that it continues, we have a Ko-fi page on which the link you can also now find in the chat, where we gather donations for the running costs of this project. So this is stuff like server and for the website and the Zoom account. And once we have got all the money to cover all these expenses, whenever this might be, we come for sure up with other good things to put the value back out again. This is supposed to be a non-profit project, and I'm very much thinking that this will, or I plan that it stays like this, period. So in case you find this helpful, your donation, even if it's not so much, is very, very helpful. Or if it doesn't seem to be a lot, seem to be much, is very, very helpful. You want to explore something a bit deeper because we just learned today, teaching something makes you learn and understand it significantly better. I highly recommend you also think about giving a Treff presentation. This all the Treffs I have given, very helpful, supportive community, nice interaction with the people like listening. And I highly recommend this kind of experience to everyone. It's just fantastic.